number of buildings can be considered being heritage building, either buildings that are important because of their historical value, somebody really important lived there, or because of a contextual value, it's part of an important streetscape or a landmark. Also, in the case of Sharon Temple, a building that is a really masterpiece of architecture or construction, where there's some really interesting materials or building construction techniques that are really important and significant to our population.
The Sharon Temple is in the town of East Gwillimbury in the community of Sharon, which is approximately 50 kilometers from downtown Toronto. Sharon Temple is many things. It's a wonderful building, a unique building in Canada, unique architecturally, built by a group called the Children of Peace. The Children of Peace call themselves the Children of Peace partly because of their very strong peace testimony in light of war in 1812. They were led by a remarkable man named David Wilson. In 1812, David Wilson began to have a series of visions which he believed were calling him to create a new community. They were in many ways ahead of their time. Not only were they pacifists, but also very ecumenical. They founded the first farmers' cooperative in Canada, the first credit union, first one we know of in Canada, the first shelter for the homeless. In 1825, they began building a structure that they called the temple, just as you might refer to a Jewish synagogue as a temple. They began it in 1825, finished it in 1832, so it took 7 years recalling Solomon's temple from the Old Testament. And there are a number of aspects of the interior which recall the layout of a Sephardic synagogue. There's also inspiration from the description of the New Jerusalem, which is square. 3 stories stood for the Trinity, 12 lanterns stood for the 12 disciples. So there was this interweaving of Christian and Jewish symbolism. As you approach the building today, you're, I think, overwhelmed or at least surprised by the size of the structure, the very imposing nature of the building. But then as you get closer to it, you start to look at the very fine detail, the reeding around the doors, the reeded quarter columns at the corners, for example. And you gain a whole new appreciation for not only the beliefs and the ideas of David Wilson and the Children of Peace, but the master builders who worked on this structure.
The Sharon Temple is a timber frame structure resting on stone foundations. So the timber frame is not unlike a typical barn, heavy timber frame construction that you'd see on the farms all over Ontario. The building is approximately 60 feet by 60 feet. It's a really perfectly square building. There are a number of columns on the interior that you see around me here, upon which rests the second tier of the building above us, and then of course the third tier above that. This is a solid piece of wood that was turned on a lathe, and then below here, this is obviously some cladding that has occurred. So this is one of the cases in the building where you'll see the structure to the naked eye. The rest of the area, the timber frame is concealed behind wood boarding and plaster work.
If you come in through the east door, you see immediately in front of you a structure called Jacob's Ladder, which is remarkable in itself for its beauty and its structural soundness, for its engineering. And it was up those stairs that the musicians would climb at the beginning of every service in the temple. In the center of the temple is the Ark, or the altar, recalling the Ark of the Covenant from the Old Testament with the 10 Commandments inside. And it shows the very fine cabinet-making skills, particularly of John Doane, who completed it in 1832. In fact, the completion of the Ark marked the completion of the temple itself.
What's really remarkable about the Ark is that it's, among other things, a replica in smaller scale of the Sharon Temple. You see the reeding at the corners of the doors here, the window surrounds, the window sill, the detailing. A lot of this Ark is actually very close to what one sees on the building on the outside. We have these lanterns at each corner of each of the piers. So we have 12 lanterns on the building, reminiscent of the 12 disciples. Each lantern is really a masterpiece in itself, a masterpiece on a masterpiece. It is one large trunk of a pine tree that's been hollowed out to create a lantern with 4 corner posts, and then windows are inserted on each of the 4 sides. I'm just amazed at the quality of the workmanship.
It's a superb building in so many ways. It's a site that's important architecturally. It's a site that represents the early religious life of early Canada, and also it was at the heart of the struggle for reform and for democracy in Upper Canada. But sadly, the Children of Peace begin to go into decline starting in the late 1860s. They depended on the charisma of the founding generation, particularly in this case, David Wilson. And once he had passed away in 1866, there was really no one else to take his place. The temple fell into decline. Many of the windows were broken, the paint was peeling, the doors were left open, the ark was vandalized, the plaster began to come away from the walls. It was in a very sad state, and it looked as if the temple itself would be demolished. However, the York Pioneer and Historical Society came to the rescue in 1917 in the midst of World War I. One of the first things they needed to do was to replace the many hundreds of broken panes of glass in order to make the building watertight again. They needed to repair the roof. They needed to make sure that the doors were secure. They needed to paint the building, and that was really the first of many years of work and many different projects to gradually restore the building and also to maintain the building. Of course, restoration and preservation is an ongoing process. It's never finished, and at present we've just finished a major restoration, reconstruction of the temple's foundations. Also, work has been done on the lanterns. Work has been done on the windows of the temple as well. Restoration is a very exacting science, and we've been very fortunate to have worked with E.R.A. architects over approximately 20 years. I think it's very important to be able to work with people who we know have the same kind of love for the building, not only the expertise, but also the passion for this structure.
E.R.A. Architects is a firm that specializes in the conservation of. This building is so unique in Canada. It's recognized as a National Historic Site at the federal level. It bears an incredible level of attention and to ensure that we're doing the right thing. The building was showing some pretty severe signs of deterioration of its foundation. So the stones had separated from themselves, the mortar was no longer able to keep the building together, and that resulted in settlement of the whole structure, which relies on its foundations to support itself. The hole that you see in the floor here is a mortise that was built when the temple was built in the 1820s. And this is the base of the Jacob ladder, which is shifted laterally back around 8 inches because of the settlement in the floors. So originally there would have been a tenon at the bottom of this post here that would have slotted into this opening here. And over the years, as the building has shifted, the stair has slowly migrated its way towards the inside of the building. We spent a number of months really examining what was going on, trying to figure out what were the mechanisms leading to this deterioration. We resorted to conservation strategy that was really quite minimalist and reversible, in fact. We didn't want anything that we did now to be impossible to undo in the future. So we relied really on the traditional way that this building relied on its strength. So full rebuilding of the foundation walls. So they excavated the perimeter on the outside and on the inside, took all the stones and brought them back together. We recommended jacking of the walls vertically a number of inches to level out the structure. And then we called for the building actually to be pulled back together and held that way through careful insertion of some new steel rods. This is actually the end of the cable that goes from this end of the building all the way under the floor to the other end, and it holds the building and prevents it from moving laterally the way it had in the past. Of course, when you start to move a building upwards and laterally, you start to cause some problems elsewhere. When they had finished the jacking, there were some small areas of plaster damage that had occurred over some of the doors and around some of the windows. Those areas of plaster were repaired by a mason specially trained in historic plaster with traditional plaster recipes. This building is so fascinating, and it continues to divulge new secrets to us. Whenever we do a new project, we discover new things about it. It's not a static object that is historical and exclusively located in the past. It is really an incredibly important site and continues to contribute to our understanding of ourselves and of our traditions.
When a visitor comes today, there's not only the temple, and we offer guided tours of the temple, but visitors may also see David Wilson's study, our exhibit building, the log house, and the Ebenezer Doan Farm. We also do a variety of special events which include concerts, a farmer's market from time to time. We do a Canada Day celebration, and the building is also increasingly used for weddings and special family events. In early September every year, we have an event that celebrates the temple in many ways, and it recalls the early days of the Children of Peace. It's called the Illumination, when they would put candles in all the 3 stories of the building and also in the lanterns on the corners. So the building metaphorically was a beacon for social justice, and quite literally it became a beacon on that first Friday night in September. We still don't have all the answers to the many questions that visitors ask about why this building was built the way it was, who the Children of Peace were. They're such a complex, unusual group. The temple is so complex in its symbolism too, that we're always finding out new things. There are always new things to discover. And I think that's one of the things that makes it a very special place to visit, because people can come here and draw some of their own conclusions, make some of their own discoveries, and really enjoy one of the great landmarks of Canada.